Hey, Paulina.
Hey, Lars.
We are on a tight schedule today. Why is that?
I told last week, right, that we found this amazing apartment and we signed the contract yesterday, the lease. So, yay! And
Congratulations.
that also comes with a lot of things that we need to prepare. So, and I'm not working today, and except for, the podcast is not work; it's a passion project, as you know, and. So because when I'm not working today, I have the entire day packed and planned for cleaning out the apartment, throw away all the things that we're not going to take, and get ready for the move.
Sounds like a fun day.
Yeah, I am. I do. I'm a little bit antsy, I just want to get going. I just want to start moving, and honestly start decorating. But and it's this limbo state now for a few weeks. There's going to be this limbo state where the old apartment looks like a mess because we are packing everything up and so on and so forth, and we can't get moved into the new apartment and can't get so next week we're going to get the key and then we can paint the walls and stuff. But it's yeah, I would say for another 2 weeks it's a limbo state in between apartments. So well,
That's how it is.
And for anyone out there who's listening who doesn't necessarily know this, this apartment situation has been going on for almost 2 years now. Because our apartment was bought and from someone else, and they took us to court to get us out of the apartment because of German law. And then took about the entire process took almost 2 years now. And so it's been a little bit of unclarity and uncertainty for the past 2 years. And now getting to a point of clarity actually is a really good thing. Even though it's sad.
Now you start stressing about cleaning.
Yeah. Come on. Who wants to clean apartments?
Nobody does. That's why I have a robot vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. But that
I can highly recommend.
I have one too, but that doesn't clean the surfaces. It only cleans the floors.
Yeah.
And if I
make more money,
I would not recommend having that robot try to clean your toilet.
Okay, good point taken. Okay, Paulina, then let's jump right to it. Are you ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to
Cultures from Hell.
And this is the second episode of Cultural Change, one person at a time. So if you haven't heard the first one, then please pause here, go back, listen to the first one, because this is kind of our, let's say, wrapping up 2025 and jumping into 2026. And joining me, as always, in the podcast is my wonderful co-host and company culture expert, Paulina, co-founder of the Culture Code Foundation. Paulina, are you ready for the second one?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
There was a really good vibe last time. Like, we always have a good vibe, but it was really I was on fire last time. Trying to get into that mood today.
I was on fire as well. And I think it also had to do with the fact that multiple topics and passion moments came together. It was fun.
Yes. Okay, let's go. Paulina, first question here in the second episode is how change actually starts. In your experience, what are the smallest actions that can have outsized cultural impact?
So generally speaking, almost anything that you do consciously can have an impact on culture. if you're being very self-aware, if you know what the situation needs and how you can potentially influence the situation, that is always a really, really good first step. So the self-awareness, the self-reflection, especially if you're a leader, but that also holds true for basically every single person in the room. And usually what I see in a lot of cultures, especially in cultures that don't have too much trust or that are afraid of making mistakes or having conflict, you can start ending a meeting with asking the question, what did we avoid talking about today? Just to instigate a little bit of that constructive conflict and to build a little bit more trust. So that could be a good start. Another thing always is vulnerability as a leader. So saying I got that wrong or I effed up here is always a strong signal, especially when it is combined with true repair. And another vulnerability moment can be explicitly thanking someone for pushing back on your ideas or your solutions as a leader. And last but not least is turning a private vent into a public improvement idea. So did we ever talk about this? Do you know the series Ted Lasso? About the football coach?
I think you mentioned it before, yes.
I think I mentioned it, right? And I think I also mentioned the shower incident. So he's appointed head coach for a soccer team in London, and he used to be a football coach in the US, so a completely different sport. And one of the players actually vents to him about the showers not working properly, not having enough water pressure. And he fixes that on his very first day. And the players really appreciate it because he doesn't even say to them, I did this, I fixed this. He doesn't use it as a moment to get praise from them. He just silently fixes that issue that affects the end of every single training session for them. And but it is something that every single soccer player can experience then from the very next day. So that's what I mean by turning a private vent into a public improvement idea. And those tiny things can really be culturally explosive because actions like this signal safety, they signal trust, they create space for honesty, they unlock energy, and all of that helps build momentum.
And can you kind of share an example where one person changed the emotional tone of an entire team?
I would think that probably the best example here was middle manager that I worked with, who really took the time every Friday to ask her team 2 questions. A, what felt good this week? And B, where did we fall short together? And obviously that needed some sort of framing in terms of, okay, what are our aspirations that we want to reach as a team? Because if you don't have that aspiration, then defining where we fell short can feel like a personal attack. And that's obviously not anything that anyone wants, right? So you want this to be very factual, but you still want this kind of reflection to turn into a growth moment for the entire team. So you need the reference frame, meaning the aspiration that you want to reach as a team. And then you need the reflection, where did we come close to this and where did we breach it? And over time, that team really started surfacing issues before they turned into any problems. And they celebrated each other more. They asked better questions in meetings. They challenged each other in a very respectful but very candid way that helped develop better solutions. And thereby they became one of the most productive teams in the organization. So culture shift really doesn't need to be loud. What it does need is to be consistent and to be conscious.
And I know that in our podcast here, I kind of like go back to tell stories from or analogies from my training, because I'm like kind of do a lot of training and so on. And every time people come to me, say like, hey, how do I become good at this? How do I squat heavy? Or how do I do this in weightlifting? Or how do I learn to walk on my hands? Or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of looking for a kind of a quick fix. Like, if you just do this, then everything is going to be fixed and so on. But my point here being is, what I say to everybody is consistency.
Yeah.
Is that you show up every day or every second day or whatever is needed, and you keep putting in the work. That's consistency. And that consistency, that leads you to your goal. Not a quick fix, not a magic pill, not start eating creatine, which is kind of the supplement of the moment and so on. That's not going to change it. And the same goes here for culture shift, right?
Absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the creatine can make a difference, but
Oh yeah, I do a lot of creatine.
but I would say that consistency, especially if you're a leader, but I think it holds true for every single person in a company and also in personal life, that consistency is the key lever to earning trust. Showing up in the same way over and over and over again so that people can rely on you. They know that no matter what happens, you're gonna be showing up in the same way. Or if you don't show up, if you show up differently one day, you will also explain that, and you will have a reason for not showing up in the same way. So yes, consistency, key player.
100%. And speaking about consistency, what role does consistency play versus bold, visible actions?
Well, the bold actions definitely can spark attention, right? So they can get people out of a rut. They can really shake them awake. But as I said, the consistency is the thing that earns trust. And if you only act boldly once, people will not know if they can count on you. But if you consistently model integrity, even when it's inconvenient, then you will become the emotional reference point for others. And that's exactly the point when people start saying, if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. So it is a role model function just as much as a trust earning function.
Very important to take a note on that one. Why are, let's call it like small wins in quotation marks, why are small wins so important when trust is low?
Because they are proof that something's working. Especially in low trust environments, people are watching with crossed arms. I'm actually experiencing that just at the moment with one of our customers. They have to do some restructuring, and it's a very low trust environment, and people are convinced that the restructuring is done in bad faith. And I doubt it. I doubt that, because I know the customer. I know very, very well, and I really don't see that. I see that it's something that has been a very, very hard decision for management. But because the trust is so low, they cannot trust that it's coming from an intention to strengthen the organization. But people have heard the way management has been communicating, and they are kind of waiting for evidence. And the tendency is that they are waiting for evidence to the negative. And therefore, it's so important that you then show them the opposite evidence, the evidence to the better, right? That you show them that the restructuring is going to have a positive impact, even though it's going to be a hard blow at the beginning, but that afterwards things are going to turn to the better. And a small win could be a different way of communicating. It could also be a new meeting format that helps involve more people into decisions, or actually making decisions at all, because I also see a lot of organizations out there that never make any decisions, right? That just talk and talk and talk, but never really come to making a decision. Another small win can be when a silent team member starts speaking up that usually doesn't speak up. A win can be, and that's not necessarily a small win, that for me is also at least a mid win, a conflict that ends with true repair instead of resentment. And especially if you're a middle manager, celebrate these small wins, name them, and really signal to your system being your team in this context, that change is not only possible, but it's already actually happening.
And I will say from a personal experience that the thing about like having changes within the organization and creating kind of a bad culture, I have tried that too many times. It just happens so often. And I would say in my experience, of course, it can come down to a lot of things, but a lot of time it comes down to management either being not transparent or being too silent, or a combination of both. That they don't like, even though they know that people started talking in the corners and so on, they just keep being silent, or they come up with BS as why this is happening. I tried once that we were sitting in this, like, what you call like an open office space, right? And we had the sales director sitting. He was actually sitting just across from me. So he was sitting in this open space, and people was openly talking about like that there was this structuring happening, and they learned about it and they heard about it, and he could hear people start like talking about it, and he just was silent. He didn't try to go out and say, hey, let's talk about this. Do you guys have any questions about it? Then just come up with it. And then management, like the top management, they came out with, let's call it an excuse. Honestly, everybody knew it was BS, and we found out later that it was. But this sales director, he kept defending it. Like instead of being on our side, and he lost all trust.
Yeah, of course.
From everybody.
Of course.
And the end game was actually that I think it was like 3 out of 10 salesperson left because of that over a couple of months before management decided to change the sales director. They saw the problem in the sales director. But that didn't change anything, because we actually they actually find a really nice replacement for the person. But the problem was that we have lost trust in the management because of the situation. So no matter who they brought in, would have a hard time getting our trust.
And that's a brilliant example of how not consciously designing communication and and addressing topics that are flying around can really harm the entire organization, right? I mean, I'm not saying every leader and every executive should plan every single interaction with their team, right? That would be inauthentic. But you should be very, very astute to rumors that are going around. You should be very aware of anxieties and fears within the team so that you can address them. You should be taking care of those needs and fears and anxieties, Because if you don't, not only do you lose the trust, but you also lose the engagement and the productivity of people. Because, I mean, surface level, right? If I'm gossiping about things that are happening in my workplace, then I'm not working, right? So that's the surface level. And underneath that level, if I'm afraid of the changes that might come, my prefrontal cortex isn't working properly. That means I cannot make the best rational decisions for my work. I will, if the anxiety and the fear increases, I will start reverting back to instinct, which can be fight, flight, or freeze. And you don't want any of those in your employees. You don't want them to fight. You don't want them to flee. You don't want them to freeze. You want them to be able to do the best work possible. And in order to do that, you need to reduce anxiety. And fears. That is one of the longer I am in this game, the more clear that becomes for me. That if you don't have the trust of your team, and if you don't manage to create a sense of calm and sincerity, then you shouldn't be a leader and you shouldn't be an executive.
100%. 100%. Okay, next question. How can listeners kind of map their own influence, even if they're not leaders?
So let me just talk to our listeners before I answer this question, why influence is important. I keep saying that every single person can change culture. And that is absolutely true. And at the same time, the more influence you have in a company, the greater the impact of your actions is going to be, both in the positive and in the bad, right? So if you want to have a bigger reach for cultural change, if you actually want things to improve on a bigger scale, then you're going to need influence. And you can have influence even if you're not a leader. One of my closest friends, she is working as an office manager. By now, she's a team lead office manager or head of. But at the beginning, when she was even an IC, right, just in quotation marks, an office manager with no official influence in the organization, because she was in such a core position where she was interacting with everyone, she had a huge influence in the company because everyone knew her. She knew everyone. People would come to her with their problems, both personal and job related. She was like the sounding board for so many people. And that gave her an incredible influence. And if you want to map that out, you can ask yourself, who respects me enough to listen? Who repeats my language in meetings? And who invites me into early conversations? And the last one is especially important when you need people to be in the room when you are not in the room. Meaning people from different departments or people from different levels in the hierarchy that can speak for you in rooms that you're not invited to, or at least loop you in afterwards. So influence isn't about rank, it's about relationship. That is very, very crucial, right? And true relationship, not this give and take kind of thing. The best influence I've seen with people is when people really truly care for each other. And then I would also say you don't need everyone's ear, you need the right people's ear. And those people aren't necessarily the loudest in the room, but they are usually the ones that others follow.
And kind of a follow-up question here. who should they focus on first? Would that be like peers, managers, or our direct reports?
You know me, I'm not a huge fan of politics, so I definitely wouldn't go after any strategy here. In terms of, okay, who can give me more influence? I would definitely always start with my own highest trust relationships, where there already is openness and momentum and interest in each other. Yeah. On the other hand, you will need at least one person with formal power or strong social capital to support any change effort. But in those cases, you don't need to look up necessarily. You can look sideways. A peer in another team can be a most valuable ally. Doesn't have to be in the hierarchy above you.
What's a sign that you're trying to influence the wrong level?
The wrong level. I would say probably when every idea that you have dies in a passive aggressive smile, or if people just nod along but nothing changes, right? Because that is a sign that either you're talking to someone who is not interested in your ideas, and then they will not extend your influence in any form, or you're talking to somebody who's overpowered, and then they also won't be able to extend your reach, or they are themselves completely disengaged, right? I mean, could be that they have already quit internal, like silent quitting, right? That they are at this point and they just don't care anymore what happens to the organization. So, and trust your gut feeling there. I guess most people have a very good instinct on if they are wasting their energy.
Let me just tell kind of a story from also actually the same office that I talked about before, because we had this peer here, like everybody who had the kind of the same position, and everybody liked him. He was and he is a great person. Like, he's always like smiling and so on. But he had a clear need for being liked or power, and it kind of had some kind of power, right?
Yeah.
And he was the kind of person, because again, he was really good at talking. He was a salesperson, so he was really good at talking, right? So everybody went to him every time they had something to say, like, or they had a problem or something to share, or they were they didn't like the management or the new rules or whatever. And he was really good at saying, like, oh yes, I hear you, let's sit down and talk about it, and so on.
Yeah.
But he kind of just absorbed everything, because he didn't want, because he wanted to kind of suck up to the manager instead. So he never like passed anything on. And I just, at some point I saw that he was just kind of this hole that everybody put everything into, and then it went away. But nothing really changed happened, right? Because he just sucked it up, because he was like empowered by that everybody liked him and came and talked to him. But he didn't really take it in and say, let's do something about it.
Okay.
And that's kind of for me, that was, it was kind of an interesting, and I was guilty of doing the same thing, because I really liked him. But I also again found out that you might went to him and say, like, hey, what do you think about this with management? Oh, I didn't really like it. Me neither. Should we do something? Yeah, let's do something about it. And then if you came to him the next day and said, like, what are we going to do? He kind of just, skipped it or started talking about something else, because he didn't want to take it. So he felt empowered that everybody liked him. And that's why he listened to people, but he didn't really listen.
And he didn't. Yeah. And in those moments, obviously, you can get the feeling that that person could be a spy, right? Like,
yes.
and that obviously kills trust as well. An interesting scenario. But honestly, I've had a similar situation with a head of HR who would always pretend that she was there for the people and that she really wanted to know what made them tick and what was important to them, and so on and so forth. And I trusted her at the beginning very, very much, and then I saw a pattern of her turning around and using that information against that person, or not necessarily against the person, but for personal gain for herself. So she would collect this information and then use it when it came in handy, when she might be needing it. So there was, and obviously there are people out there who do this. Obviously there are also people out there who teach you to do this and say, okay, you need to be super political. And I know that to a certain extent, we do all need to be political when it comes to work. Unfortunately, in certain circumstances, I've been lucky enough in my own company and in one or two other employment situations that I didn't have to play any political games. And I personally am convinced that this is the better environment for people, that people thrive more when they can be real and when they don't have to play any games. But there are, this was the most frequent advice that I've gotten throughout my career, usually by men, to play along and to learn to be more political if I really wanted to get ahead. So, and for me, this is honestly just a waste of time, because it doesn't do anything but advance your own career. It doesn't create safety, it doesn't create trust, it doesn't create real, true, honest relationships. It doesn't produce more productivity. It has any benefit for the organization in and of itself. It just drives me crazy.
What are some, let's call it, trust rituals in everyday work? And we're not talking like workshops or offsites here.
So I would probably say, again, consistent human behaviors that signal psychological safety and thereby creating the safety, right? Can be regular retros on projects that have gone wrong, or also projects that have gone right. So that you really look at it, what happened, what could we learn from it, what can we do better the next time. It can also be showing up in a short debrief after a tense client call, where you're checking in with your team members to see, okay, what's going on here. Also having your team's back. I'm pretty sure I already shared that story once, that when one of my female account executives, was treated in a sexist way by a customer, we then refused to work with them anymore. So that kind of moments obviously create a lot of safety for the person that you're working with. But it can also be much smaller. For example, letting the most junior person speak first in team meetings, or and very, very important, true repair conversations. For example, last week I dismissed your idea. I noticed that I did it, and I want to apologize for it. This is not the way we do things around here. Let's get back to your idea. Talk me through it more, right? And if you return to signals like that, or if you continue being consistent in this kind of behavior, then you build rituals that become habits for yourself.
And then when you try to kind of rebuild that trust. So you lost your trust, you're trying to rebuild it. How long does it actually take to rebuild once it's damaged? Is there kind of a short answer to this, or?
I would say usually it's longer than you want, but it can be faster than you fear. But that depends on two things. Again, consistency and ownership. So if the person who broke trust names that they broke trust and actively repairs it over time, trust can rebuild surprisingly fast. But if you try to ignore it or perform your way out of it, then it will linger.
And what does a realistic, in quotation mark, small win look like in a dysfunctional culture?
Simply by choosing a new reaction. When someone pushes back and doesn't get punished as they used to get. When a leader says openly, I was wrong, a person who would never admit beforehand that they were wrong, and you can feel that they actually mean that. Or when a team surfaces an issue without blaming someone, even though they used to blame people beforehand all the time, right? Small, different reactions are a huge win and can feel like coming up for air or seeing a green plant in the desert.
And how do you protect your energy when change feels slow or invincible? I'm a very impatient person. So if something is like slow or I can't see it, I get really impatient. How do you protect your energy in those situations?
My suggestion is to narrow your focus. Don't look at the entire company. Don't look at trying to change everything all at once. Zoom in either on one relationship that you want to improve, zoom in on one pattern, or simply one moment where you personally showed up aligned with your values. You can also look at the self-reflection and choosing moments where you consciously want to do things differently for yourself and for your colleagues or your team members. Or if you do that, then you will find proof that you're still in your own integrity, even if the system itself isn't. And feeling your own integrity is where sustainability or resilience can reside within you.
Makes sense. When should someone accept that change isn't possible and choose themselves instead? Or I would say, should they ever do that?
I personally don't believe that change ever is not possible. I honestly believe that there's always room to change things. But there can be situations where the cost of staying is your dignity or your health. And if you're being asked to betray your personal values, to gaslight your team or harm someone in the name of business outcomes, that for me is a very clear signal to walk away. And you know that I've been there and that I did walk. So there are moments and instances and situations where the bravest act of change is saying, not here, not like this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Paulina, what has working so closely with broken cultures taught you about people? Because I would imagine that with the Culture Code Foundation, you guys have worked with a lot of both good cultures and broken cultures. But what has it taught you about people?
I wouldn't actually say that we're working with broken cultures. I think we're working with challenged cultures. And what I have seen a lot is that people are more exhausted than they admit. And at the same time, that they are far more powerful than they realize. most of what looks like toxicity is actually protection. So people withdraw, control, or lash out because they are scared. And that's exactly what I said before, right? The instinct sets in if you're scared, if you're living in fear. Withdrawal is the freeze. Control is withdrawal is flight. Control is freeze, and lashing out is fight. So those are instinctive, fear-driven reactions. But when you create even a sliver of safety, people can soften. They remember who they wanted to be at work. And yes, obviously there are people who just want to work when they are at work, but most people want to have a purpose. Most people want to have connections at work, and most people want to feel safe at work. Because those are just original human needs, biologically human needs. So in the big scale, I don't believe in toxic people. I do believe in toxic individuals, but not in the big scale. And I definitely believe in tired humans inside imperfect systems.
Yeah. And we have all either heard about, know somebody who's a tired, burned out human in a broken system. I think, and I've been there myself. I've tried it. You get so burned out, right? So what do individuals underestimate most about their own impact? Because I would imagine a lot of people do that.
I think most people think that they're alone with trying to change things, or with believing that things could be different or should be different. And when you think that you're alone with this, you also obviously think that no one cares or is actually watching what you're doing. But at the same time, with your everyday behavior, every single person is modeling something. How you speak up, how you apologize, whether you help the intern or ignore them. Someone is definitely learning from you, watching you every day. So the question isn't, do I have impact? Because you do. Obviously, the more influence you have, either hierarchical or social, the bigger the impact is. But you don't need to ask yourself, if you do have impact, you should ask yourself, what kind of culture is my personal behavior endorsing?
And I don't know if this is a bad example here, but let's. We don't want to have an episode where I don't mention my beautiful girlfriend, right? So she kind of had me reading the book The Big Leap.
Yeah.
Which is a great book. I think I can highly recommend it. And one of the things that stands out for me, so the whole thing is about breaking your glass ceiling, right? Like breaking your upper limits. And one of the things that stands out to me is where it says, let me see if I can get this right here. I'm very bad at quoting things and remembering. But it's like that the limit is not limit of your possibilities of what you can achieve, right? It's not caused by your surroundings. It's caused by your mind.
Yeah.
And back to what you're saying here about how do individuals underestimate most about their own impact, right? That it's not the surroundings limitations that should hold you back of impacting people. It is your conscience about, like, how can I, or what can I, or can I even impact people? Because what you're saying, we talked about the last couple of episodes about just going out and smile to people, having that impact. So if you work in a really bad environment at work, try to start the day of coming into the office every morning, smile to everybody and say, good morning, everybody. That will have an impact.
And I know this feels, especially nowadays, that kind of impact feels tiny compared to all the huge upheaval that's going out outside, right? But if the majority of people start choosing those small signals and those small moments, I have no doubt whatsoever that this can become a huge counterforce for the good.
Of course it can. And again, like, if I know this comes down to what you believe in terms of like the world and how it works, like on a spiritual level and so on. But if you believe in the butterfly effect, right, where you kind of create that wave and that butterfly flapping its wings, it becomes like a big wave at the ocean in the end. Then again, maybe that one smile to that one person doesn't like come off as a big thing. But if that person is on the way to a meeting with 10 people and they come in smiling because you smile to that, they go into 10 people and say, "Good morning, everybody," and smile. And those 10 people go out and talk to 10 people because they had a great day now, right?
Yeah.
So, don't underestimate your power of, go out. Everybody go out today and smile.
Yeah.
And make the world a better place, because it's going to shit anyway. So,
let's make
okay,
the world
Paulina.
a better place, one smile at a time.
Yes. Oh, that's a t-shirt. Okay, last question here in the second episode here. If someone listening feels tired, cynical, or burned out, what do you want them, what do you want to say to them? And you can't say go smile, because we already said that.
Yeah. You're not the problem. You are working in a system that rewards the wrong things. We're living in a world that rewards the wrong things. And at the same time, I strongly believe that the majority of us share the same positive norms, the same good things. And the fact that it hurts at the moment means that you care. And really hold on to that. Hold on to caring. Because as long as people care, they can change things. And they can change things for the better.
100%. And everybody put a pin in that, put it on repeat like 200 times, and then start believing in it, and the world will be so much a better place. Okay, Paulina, so this has been the end of our second episode, kind of as a closing up 2025 and starting 2026. So from next week, we are back on track again with another good topic. And before closing up and leaving it up to you to tell where people can find us, let's just repeat what we repeat every time. If somebody is listening out there, they have a story they want to tell, either in person or anonymously on the podcast, reach out to you. We would love to tell your story, or we would love to have you on the show. So please hook us up. And Paulina, where can they find us?
They can find us on Instagram. They can find us on LinkedIn. They can find the Culture Code Foundation at culturecodefoundation.com. And we will put all of those in the
it's called the show notes.
Show notes. Thank you. Why? I did not remember this word today.
It's so much Friday on both our brains today.
And I just want to repeat what I said, what I shared last week, because I'm still super excited about our new referral program, which is called Culture for Good.
I love that one.
Where we will donate 10% of our revenue that we're making with any new customer to a good cause in the name of the person who's referred this new customer to us. So if you know any company out there, it can be your own company, that really should work on their culture, you can refer them to us, and then leave the job to us to close that deal, and then we will do this donation. So
An easy way of making an impact.
Yeah.
Right?
Win-win-win. Exactly.
Yes.
Let's have an impact.
And to all the people out there listening to the podcast and have listened to the end here, let me just leave off with one question that you'd ask yourself this week. What kind of culture does my behavior create? And on that note, thank you everybody for listening in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks everyone, and thank you, Lars.